Fort Fizzle was a temporary military barricade erected in July 1877 to intercept the Nez Perce Indians in the flight from Idaho across the Lolo Pass into the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. The name describes the effectiveness of the fort. Background: in the Nez Perce War, the U.S. Army defeated, but did not demoralize, the Nez Perce under Chief Joseph at the Battle of the Clearwater, July 11–12, 1877. Pursued by General O. Howard. The Nez Perce, numbering about 200 warriors and 750 persons in total along with more than 2,000 horses, decided to flee across Lolo Pass into the Bitterroot Valley and onward to the Great Plains. The Nez Perce were familiar with this region, having been frequent visitors while en route to the plains to hunt buffalo. The Nez Perce leader Looking Glass persuaded the other Nez Perce leaders that they would be safe from the U.S. Army in Montana and that he could lead them to a safe refuge among his friends, the Crow Indians. The Army and the Nez Perce, white settlers and U.S. Army soldiers in the Bitterroot Valley, informed by telegraph that the Nez Perce were coming the way, prepared to defend themselves. Captain Charles Rowan had only 35 soldiers to defend the valley. On July 23, two white youths who had been prisoners of the Nez Perce reported to Rowan that the Nez Perce were camped at Lolo Hot Springs, on the Montana side of the pass and only a few miles from the white settlements in the Bitterroot Valley. The youths had been released to bring a message from the Nez Perce that they wished to pass peacefully through the settlements. Rowan, however, was ordered to compel the Indians to surrender their arms and ammunition, and to dispute the passage by force of arms into Bitterroot Valley. On July 25, Rowan, his 35 soldiers and 50 civilian volunteers constructed a wooden barricade of logs and earth 2 or 3 miles below where the Nez Perce were camped and about 5 miles west of Lolo, Montana. On July 26, Rowan met with Looking Glass, who requested to traverse the Bitterroot Valley without violence. Rowan demanded that the Nez Perce surrender their arms and ammunition, and the meeting terminated without any decision. The next day, 216 armed men, including 15 to 20 Flathead Indian scouts, were gathered at the improvised fort, and the governor of Montana, Benjamin A. Potts, had arrived. Rowan and Looking Glass met again and each repeated their demands. When Rowan returned to the fort and said that he anticipated a battle with the Nez Perce, most of the volunteers left, declaring that no act of hostility on the part should provoke the Indians. Quote, "The next morning, July 27, less than 100 men were left to man the fort and oppose the Nez Perce. Governor Potts had also found reason to depart. According to Chief Joseph, Captain Rowan agreed to allow the Nez Perce to pass through Bitterroot Valley in peace. Rowan never admitted making such an agreement. The barricade where Rowan and his men were entrenched was in a constricted 200-yard wide passage in the canyon, enclosed on both sides by precipitous ridges where a goat could not pass." Quote, "Nevertheless, on July 28, the Nez Perce men, women, children, and livestock climbed the ridges and bypassed the barricade, leaving the defenders in the rear. Rowan and his soldiers exchanged a few shots with the Nez Perce on the ridge and then abandoned the fort and followed the Indians down into the Bitterroot Valley at a safe distance. An advance party of soldiers bumped into the rearguard of the Nez Perce. Looking Glass exchanged friendly greetings with them. 50 of the civilian volunteers stumbled into the Nez Perce camp and were captured, but were released after Looking Glass promised no violence against anybody. The soldiers retired to Missoula, Montana. The civilian volunteers disbanded, and the Nez Perce continued on the way south through the Bitterroot Valley, buying fresh horses, food, and supplies from local ranchers and farmers. Thus, the makeshift fort acquired its name, Fort Fizzle. The aftermath. The Fort Fizzle fiasco prompted volleys of charges and countercharges of cowardice and ineptitude between and among the government and citizens of Montana and the U.S. government and its army. A volunteer explained that, "We were not silly enough to uselessly incite the Indians to devastate our valley." Quote, "Many Montanans, including the governor and fire-breathing journalists, began to comment favorably on the bravery and audacity of the Nez Perce and the wisdom of the citizens in avoiding an armed encounter. However, the respite from war of the Nez Perce was brief, lulled into complacency by the peaceful passage through the Bitterroot Valley. They would be attacked on August 9 by Colonel John Gibbon and 200 men in the bloody Battle of the Big Hole. A portion of the fort has been reconstructed at Fort Fizzle Historic Site. The Fort Fizzle Historic Site parallels the historic Lolo Trail once used by the Nez Perce, Salish and Kootenai tribes in Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark's westbound expedition followed Lolo Creek on September 11 to 20, 1805, and again on June 24 to 30, 1806, when they revisited the area on the way back east.